If you've ever been broken, betrayed, forgotten, or wounded, this message is for you. There's something powerful, something divine that happens when a woman who was hurt gets touched by the hand of God. You see, God doesn't overlook the pain. He repurposes it. He doesn't waste your tears. He waters your destiny with them. Let me tell you something. If you've been through heartbreak, rejection, abandonment, that's not the end of your story. It might just be the beginning of your blessing. When a woman has been deeply hurt, there's often a silence that follows. It's the kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. It means she's trying to hold herself together. It means she's sorting through what broke her, questioning why it happened, wondering where God was when the betrayal, the loss, the abandonment, or the heartbreak came. Pain has a way of shaking a woman to her core. But what many don't see in the moment is that her pain is not just a wound, it's a doorway. And when God is involved, pain becomes the very path to purpose. You see, God doesn't allow pain to leave a woman empty. He allows pain to prepare her. When a woman is hurting, when she's shattered, she's also being positioned for something greater. It might not feel like it. It might not look like it. But pain in the hands of God is never wasted. He takes every disappointment, every tear, every moment of shame, and he begins to craft something meaningful out of it. Her suffering is not a sentence. It's a setup. It's not a full stop. It's the comma in a sentence God is still writing. There's something sacred about what a woman learns in the wilderness of pain. When her comfort is stripped away, when the people she depended on are gone, when the dreams she held collapse in front of her, that's when she discovers who she really is, and more importantly, who God really is. She no longer depends on shallow validation or surface relationships. She begins to crave depth. She begins to seek truth. Pain turns her inward, and God begins to rebuild her from the inside out. The same pain that once made her question her worth now becomes the tool God uses to reveal her identity. He reminds her that she's not what they did to her. She's not what she lost. She's not who walked away. She's not the mistake she made. She is still chosen, still loved, still called. And even though pain spoke lies into her heart, God's voice speaks louder. He reminds her that she is fearfully and wonderfully made, even when she feels broken and unworthy. Slowly, he begins to breathe life back into her purpose. And here's the miracle. That very pain she wanted to escape becomes the key to her assignment. She starts to see others differently. She no longer judges quickly because she knows what it's like to break quietly. She no longer needs to pretend because she knows the value of being real. The pain that nearly crushed her has now given her a voice, a testimony, a compassion she never had before. She begins to realize what she went through wasn't just for her. It was to serve, to strengthen, to comfort someone else. What once made her hide now makes her lead. What once brought her to her knees now pushes her into her calling. There's a power that rises from pain when God is in the process. You can see it in her eyes. You can hear it in her voice. She doesn't carry herself the same anymore. Her steps are steadier. Her focus is sharper. Her prayers are deeper. She doesn't need applause to know she's valuable. She doesn't need a title to know she has influence. She's learned to trust the one who met her in her pain and walked her through it. That's purpose. That's transformation. That's God's hand in motion. So, when you see a woman rise from something that should have destroyed her, don't assume she just got over it. No, she grew through it. God met her in the fire, and instead of getting burned, she came out refined. Her pain became the soil, and her purpose is the fruit. That's not just healing. That's a divine blessing unfolding before your eyes. When a woman has been hurt, her natural instinct is often to seek comfort, affirmation, and support from those around her. She reaches out, hoping that someone will see her pain, understand her heart, and validate her worth. But one of the clearest signs that God is blessing her is when she no longer depends on the approval of others to feel valuable. Something begins to shift in her spirit. She starts to walk without the crutch of applause, attention, or validation. She stops waiting for people to tell her she's enough, because she's already heard it from the only voice that matters, God's. This change doesn't happen overnight. It usually begins in isolation. After the betrayal, after the heartbreak, after the abandonment, she finds herself alone. And in that quiet place, she learns something she never could have learned while surrounded by noise. God is still there. His voice, though not always loud, is steady. His presence, though not always dramatic, is constant. And slowly, she begins to discover that being unseen by people doesn't mean she's been forgotten by God. In fact, sometimes He removes the voices around her so she can finally hear His. That's when she starts walking differently. She no longer asks, "Do they like me?" Or "Did they notice me?" Instead, she asks, "Am I pleasing God?" That shift in focus is a sign of divine blessing. Because when a woman stops performing for the crowd, she starts living in purpose. When she no longer bends over backwards to fit into someone else's expectations, she finally begins to walk in her true identity. And that kind of freedom is dangerous to the enemy, because now she can't be manipulated by praise or criticism. She's grounded. She's anchored. You'll notice that she no longer begs for love that has to be chased. She doesn't settle for friendships that require her to shrink. She stops engaging in conversations that drain her soul. Why? Because she has tasted something deeper: God's approval. And once you know you're chosen by Him, accepted by Him, and loved without conditions, no human rejection can unsate you. She walks with the quiet confidence of someone who's heard God whisper, "You are mine." This woman begins to move differently in relationships, in conversations, and in decisions. She doesn't need to post everything to be seen. She doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. She doesn't need to prove herself because she understands she was already approved when she was formed in the womb. Her strength isn't in how many people applaud her, but in how obedient she is to her calling. Her sense of direction doesn't come from compliments. It comes from conviction. That is how you know God is doing something real in her life. Now, that doesn't mean she becomes proud or disconnected. It means she becomes whole. There's a humility that grows in her, but it's no longer tied to insecurity. She can serve without being used. She can lead without needing control. She can love others without losing herself, because her worth isn't attached to their reaction. It's rooted in God's truth. That's a woman who has been blessed through the fire. You'll find that she becomes more patient, more discerning, more selective. She's no longer moved by every opinion because she knows who called her. She doesn't explain herself as much because her life begins to speak for itself. And even when the enemy tries to remind her of her past, she's not shaken. She's not living for likes. She's living for legacy. So when you see a woman no longer leaning on the crutch of approval, know this: God has done a deep work in her. He has strengthened her in the silence. He has taught her how to stand alone so that now she can walk in purpose, even when no one else is clapping. That is the mark of a woman who has been truly blessed. When a woman has been hurt, especially in ways that cut deep into her sense of identity, it can leave her questioning who she is. The pain often doesn't just wound her heart. It wounds how she sees herself. She begins to carry labels that were never meant for her. She starts to define herself by her failures, her trauma, or the way others treated her. The betrayal whispers, "You're not worthy." The rejection says, "You're not enough." The abuse screams, "You're broken beyond repair." But when God steps in and begins to bless a woman who was hurt, one of the clearest signs is that He begins to rebuild her identity, not based on what she's been through, but based on who He created her to be. This rebuilding isn't instant. It's a holy process. God begins to gently peel away the false names, the broken beliefs, and the lies that pain has planted in her heart. He begins to remind her that she is not what happened to her. She is who He says she is. He speaks over her soul with truth that overrides the noise of her past. She may have been called abandoned, but God calls her chosen. She may have been treated like she was disposable, but God says she is deeply loved and divinely crafted. Every time she opens her Bible, every time she prays, every time she hears His voice, another piece of her true self is restored. It's in the quiet moments The tearful prayers, the nights she cries alone, that God does his most intimate work. He doesn't just comfort her. He redefines her. He shows her that her worth doesn't depend on whether someone stayed or left. Her value isn't measured by how many times she failed or how long she was lost. It is fixed secure and rooted in the fact that she was made in his image. That truth starts to replace the shame. That truth becomes the foundation she never had before. And as it takes hold, something powerful happens. She begins to believe it. As God rebuilds her identity, you can see the change. She no longer walks with her head down. She's not afraid of her reflection anymore. She stops apologizing for existing. She no longer tries to fit into boxes others created for her. She begins to speak differently, think differently, and carry herself with a quiet confidence that comes from being anchored in something eternal. Her confidence isn't arrogance, it's restoration. She's not pretending to be okay. She knows she's okay because she knows who her Father is. What's even more beautiful is that her relationship with God becomes personal. It's not about religion. It's about identity. She starts to realize that her healing didn't just make her feel better. It made her whole. She doesn't need to strive to be accepted because she understands she already is. She doesn't chase titles or validation because she knows she's royalty in the kingdom. And when the enemy tries to remind her of the past, she now has the spiritual authority to remind him of her identity. She knows that she is redeemed, restored, and repurposed by grace. This kind of transformation becomes contagious. Others begin to notice. They may not know all the details of what she went through, but they can see that she carries something different. She becomes a reflection of what it looks like when God puts the pieces back together. Not in the same way, but in a new, stronger, more beautiful form. She's not who she used to be, and she's not trying to go back. She's walking forward, daily becoming more of the woman God intended. When God is blessing a woman who has been hurt, one of the most sacred signs is this: her identity is no longer shaped by her scars, but by her Savior. And that kind of woman is unshakable because she finally knows who she is. One of the most profound and quiet signs that God is blessing a woman who was hurt is when she starts to attract peace instead of chaos. It doesn't always happen suddenly, but gradually you begin to notice something different about her life. The drama that used to surround her is no longer there. The people who used to bring confusion and instability into her world have either walked away or been removed. The conversations that once drained her spirit are no longer welcome. The situations that used to entangle her don't interest her anymore. She begins to crave a different kind of atmosphere, one where peace rules and God's presence is felt. This shift doesn't come because she's better than others. It comes because she's finally tasted what peace feels like. And once you've experienced God's peace, chaos loses its appeal. That woman who once lived in survival mode now starts to protect her peace like it's sacred. And that's because it is. She understands now that peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of God in the middle of them. It's not about having everything figured out, but about knowing she's not alone. It's about no longer needing to control every outcome, because she trusts that God is already working in the background. God begins to rewire her spirit. Where there was once anxiety, now there is calm. Where there was confusion, now there is clarity. Where there was constant emotional turmoil, now there is stillness. She's no longer triggered by every insult or thrown off by every unexpected situation. She doesn't need to fight every battle or respond to every attack. She's learned how to choose her peace over her pride, her healing over her history, and her future over her feelings. People may not understand her silence now. They might even accuse her of changing. But she has changed. Not because she's trying to be distant, but because she's become discerning. She has learned that not everything deserves her energy, and not everyone deserves access to her spirit. This isn't arrogance. This is wisdom that came through the fire. When you've cried enough, been used enough, broken enough, you learn how to guard your space. You learn that peace is a blessing. And anything that threatens, it is a threat to your healing. She starts choosing different environments. She's drawn to places where her soul can breathe. She looks for people who speak life, not gossip. She desires conversations that elevate her thinking, not ones that stir up insecurity. Her circle may get smaller, but her peace gets greater. And that is not loss. That is alignment. That is evidence that God is shaping her world to match the healing He's done inside of her. She no longer feels the need to be everywhere, prove everything, or fix everyone. She knows that being whole in Christ is better than being accepted by the crowd. In the past, she may have confused chaos with excitement. She may have mistaken drama for passion. But now she sees clearly. Peace doesn't mean boring. It means blessed. It means stable. It means she can sleep at night. It means she doesn't have to overthink every word or second, guess every move. Peace means she can hear God more clearly, love herself more gently, and move forward more confidently. The woman who begins to attract peace is the woman who has stopped living from her wounds and started living from her healing. She walks lighter. She smiles more sincerely. She no longer lives on edge because the weight of proving herself is gone. Her spirit is quiet, not because she has nothing to say, but because her heart has finally found rest. When God blesses a woman who has been hurt, He doesn't just fix her circumstances. He changes her atmosphere, and the proof is in her peace. Not just external peace, but inner peace. A peace that guards her heart, anchors her soul, and sets the tone for everything around her. That's not a temporary feeling. That's the favor of God resting on her life. When God begins to bless a woman who has been hurt, one of the most powerful signs of his hand on her life is that she becomes a vessel of healing for others. It doesn't happen because she planned it. It doesn't come from a desire to be seen or praised. It happens because her pain has been transformed into wisdom, her scars into testimony, and her survival into a source of strength for those still in the struggle. She no longer just carries her own story. She carries the ability to help others walk through theirs. This kind of woman doesn't speak from theory. She speaks from experience. She knows what heartbreak feels like. She knows what it's like to cry in silence, to smile in public while breaking in private, to feel invisible, to be misunderstood, to be underestimated, to be left behind. And because of that, her words carry weight. Her presence carries healing. There's something about a woman who has walked through pain with God and come out whole. She doesn't just give advice. She gives perspective. She doesn't just sympathize. She empathizes. She doesn't just pray for others. She prays with them because she's been there. She starts to notice pain in others that most people overlook. Her discernment becomes sharper. Her heart becomes more tender. She feels drawn to lift others up, not out of obligation, but out of a deep understanding. She remembers what it was like to be in that dark place, unsure if she'd ever make it out. And now, she becomes the hand that reaches back into the fire to help someone else find their way out. That's not just kindness. That's a calling. That's what it means to be a vessel. The beautiful thing about this kind of healing is that it's not loud. It's not showy. It's often in the quiet conversations, the late night messages, the moments when no one is watching. She becomes the one people go to when they don't know who else to call. She becomes the safe space for others to fall apart without judgment. She becomes the one who listens, who encourages, who uplifts. Not because she has all the answers, but because she knows the one who does. Her healing journey hasn't made her proud. It's made her compassionate. It's softened her in the right places while strengthening her, where she was once weak. And through this, God continues to use her, not because she's perfect, but because she's available, not because she never hurts anymore, but because she knows where to run when she does. Her life becomes a living testimony that healing is possible, that restoration is real, and that God truly does turn ashes into beauty. People may not even know the full depth of her story, but they feel something when they're around her. They feel seen. They feel understood. They feel safe. And that's because she's not just speaking healing. She's carrying it. What once made her feel cursed now makes her anointed. What once made her feel broken now makes her relatable. She doesn't try to hide her past. She uses it to build bridges for others. She's not ashamed of where she came from because it's proof of what God can do. Her pain didn't end her. It prepared her. It trained her. It gave her the sensitivity, the patience, and the resilience to serve others in ways she never could have imagined. This is how you know God is truly blessing her. Her healing didn't stop with her. It flows through her. She becomes a vessel, not just of healing, but of hope, of restoration, of truth. And every life she touches becomes evidence that God can redeem anything, rebuild anyone, and bring purpose out of the deepest pain. That kind of woman doesn't just survive. She multiplies healing wherever she goes. When a woman has been hurt, it can feel like her life is locked behind closed doors. The pain, the betrayal, the trauma. They all create walls around her that seem impossible to break through. Opportunities feel distant. Joy feels out of reach. Hope seems like something reserved for other people. She watches others move forward while she feels stuck, wondering if the damage done to her heart has disqualified her from the future she once dreamed of. But when God begins to bless her, one of the most powerful signs is that doors begin to open, doors that pain once blocked, doors she never thought she'd walk through again, and doors she didn't even know existed. These doors aren't just physical or circumstantial. They are spiritual. They represent access. They represent favor. They represent new beginnings that are only possible because of what she endured and how she trusted God in the process. At one point in her life, the trauma she went through may have silenced her, paralyzed her, or made her feel like she was too damaged to do anything meaningful. But God doesn't leave her there. He begins to rewrite her narrative. He takes the very thing that tried to close her in and uses it as a key to unlock her destiny. What's amazing is that these doors don't open because of her rare summe, her reputation, or her resources. They open because of God's grace. She may not have the qualifications the world looks for, but she has something greater. She has been forged in fire. She has wisdom born from pain. She has depth that can't be taught in classrooms. She has strength that only comes from survival and submission to God. And when God opens a door, no one can shut it. Not her past, not her critics, not even the enemy himself. She starts to walk into rooms she used to feel unworthy of. She begins to speak with a voice she once thought didn't matter. She's invited to places where she can make an impact. Not because she fought her way in, but because God prepared the space for her. These open doors aren't just about opportunity. They're about purpose. They're about divine assignments that only she can fulfill because of what she's lived through. Her pain didn't disqualify her. It prepared her. It shaped her character. It refined her discernment. It deepened her compassion. And now those qualities open doors that talent alone never could. Sometimes the doors are relationships, healthy, meaningful, God-ordained relationships that restore what was broken. Sometimes the doors are platforms, places where she can speak, lead, write, or serve in ways that bring healing to others. Sometimes the doors are internal, freedom from guilt, release from shame, peace where there used to be fear. But in every case, the door is evidence that God didn't forget her. He was working behind the scenes the entire time, preparing a place for her to stand in strength when she once only knew survival. What once kept her isolated now becomes the very thing that connects her to purpose. The door that was closed because of her pain becomes the door that opens because of her healing. And she walks through it not with arrogance, but with deep gratitude. She knows she didn't open that door herself. She knows it was the hand of God. She doesn't take it lightly. She walks with humility and boldness, fully aware that she's only standing where she is because grace made a way. This is what happens when God blesses a woman who was hurt. Her story doesn't end in the valley. It rises into places of purpose. It moves through doors that pain once locked tight. And with each step forward, she becomes a living reminder that God opens doors no one can shut. And sometimes He uses brokenness as the very key to unlock them. If you're that woman, or you know that woman, don't count her out. Don't bury her while she's still breathing. Because when God starts blessing a woman who was hurt, she becomes unstoppable. Not because she's strong, but because God is strong through her. Her tears were a seed. Her faith is the root. And her future, oh, her future is the harvest. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. So at Psalm 30:5, your morning is coming. Your healing is proof that God is still writing your story. And your blessing, your real blessing, has already begun.